Is this what Warzone Ranked is now? We were playing today, and while this was the first group of cheaters we saw, this is some pretty bad blatant cheating. They had managed to find a way to get under the map, and they were just killing people who came to the buy station. And it's not even like they were trapped under the map. They could use a vehicle to get out again. But it kind of sucks that this is something that's happening in a game that's been running for 5 years, all on the same engine, supposedly with the promise of, hey, this will make the game more stable, this will mean we can keep on improving it, and yet here we are, playing on the first map that ever came out for it, with people finding ways to get under the map and kill everyone else in a ranked game. Now really that's not what I want to talk about today. Ranked has had its ups and downs over the history of Warzone, and with Season 3 Reloaded, they've brought it back, this time on Verdansk, the first time we've ever had ranked mode on Verdansk. And when it first launched with Season 3 Reloaded, apparently it was a nightmare. I wasn't about, I was away on holiday, but apparently servers were crashing all of the time, people were cheating all over the place, and they actually took the game offline. Well, they took the ranked mode offline for a few days to try and combat this. Now, since it's been back, I've been playing a bit. We're only up to gold so far. But while we've been playing, I haven't seen the server crash at all since it came back, and the only cheaters I've seen have been those people hiding under the map. But Ranked isn't what it used to be. The big problem for me is really that Ranked is more difficult than ever. Like, this is easily the hardest version of Warzone Ranked I've ever seen, and I think there's a few different reasons for that, all of which kind of point to an ongoing problem with Warzone. The first is that the ranks have become slightly meaningless. From when I started off in Bronze 1, because everyone got sent back to Bronze 1 at the beginning of this season, I was playing up against people that absolutely had no business being there. And it's obviously possible that a lot of people, because everyone had been put back to Bronze 1, a lot of people were just making their way back up through the ranks, so you were probably playing against people who were Platinum, Diamond, Crimson, Iridescent last time, now had to go back to Bronze 1, so I was getting up against people who were like that, which obviously sucks. But sometimes when you're killing people, or you get killed by people, it does show you their calling card and you can see what rank they are. And right from when we were in Bronze, we were still coming up against people that were in Platinum, or even higher, while we were still stuck in Bronze. And that just seems completely stupid. Like, surely the whole point of Ranked is you are playing against other people in your league. And in previous versions of Ranked, like when it was on Resurgence or on Fortune's Keep, I would generally be quite impressed with how the matchmaking worked. Like, you'd normally see people maybe one rank higher or lower than you until you got up to about Diamond, and then you would start seeing people in Crimson and Iridescent. It would broaden out a bit because, you know, not that many people had played it all the way up to Diamond. But this is a huge problem for the mode, because one of the massive appeals of playing Ranked before is that you would be playing against people of your skill level. And to be honest, it was kind of fun when you were moving up through Bronze and Silver, because you didn't really belong there, you would fly through. And I think the last time we did Bronze on Resurgence, we were like winning nearly every game. I think I won like 4 out of 5 games while moving through Bronze. It was absolutely ridiculous because obviously we didn't belong there. We were better than nearly everyone in the lobby. And while it's not fair on those other people in the lobby, we didn't have a say in it. You know, we had to play through those games to get up because Warzone stupidly doesn't do placement matches. And that meant that we had some insanely easy games at the beginning. And that just doesn't seem to happen anymore. Oh, just watch this. There's a crazy thing happened here where turns out the car can be propelled by the flare from the recon. That's absolutely insane. Anyway, sorry, that's a tangent. So yeah, that's the first problem in Ranked, is that the ranks seem to be grouped together a lot more than they ever were before. And that means people who are in Bronze are now coming up against people who are way better than them, which absolutely sucks. And it means people in the higher ranks can sometimes get a really easy game by coming up against a load of people who are in Bronze, especially if they do a little bit of, you know, messing around with the matchmaking. Like, they play really early in the morning, or they VPN to other servers. And watching streamers on Twitch, I've already seen a bunch of EU players playing Ranked on North American servers, so they get those super early morning servers in America, because then they've got a lot more freedom to play against Bronze players, and they're going to get easy SR, which doesn't really seem fair. Now, the other big problem with Ranked right now isn't really a problem specific to Ranked, it's a problem with Season 3 Reloaded, and that's that they seem to have started off reintroducing some of those mechanics that lend themselves to a bigger skill gap. And really here I'm talking about the Ascenders. Like, people who really know how to use the Ascenders can do some amazing things with them. And the effect that that's had on Verdansk is that it's taken away a lot of those really good power positions. At the beginning of Season 3 in Verdansk, you could get up to some locations like maybe the top of Stadium if you had a helicopter, or some of the taller buildings in downtown, you know, the top of Hospital, the ATC Tower, a few different locations, the top of the airport roof, again, if you had a helicopter. And they would be super strong locations where even if you maybe weren't the best players, because you'd managed to get yourselves there with the gear that you needed, you could hold down a section of the map. And it was really exciting doing that. And if you needed to attack a team who were up there, maybe you had a bounty on there or you needed to cross, you really needed to think about how you were going to use score streaks, how you were going to use lethals and tacticals, how you were going to like make sure you were team shotting and sniping people at the same time in order to take people down from there. It led to some interesting situations in the game. And yeah, it wasn't always fair. You know, a team that were on top of one of those positions would have a massive advantage over you, but it made the game a little bit more interesting. You know, if you knew a good team were in one of those positions, you just needed to avoid that part of the map. Now they've added Ascenders. It's way easier to take those places. It's really difficult for a not so good team to hold any of those locations, and it means a really good team who have a bounty on you can probably take you out. And you might think, oh, well, that's brilliant. Like, that's something that you want, especially in something like ranked. You want every position to be something that people can attack in some way. But I think the Ascenders have made it too easy. Like, on the rooftop of airport where I am now, there's 4 separate Ascenders to get up there, and they're in kind of completely different locations. There's 2 next to each other, and then there's 1 lower down and 1 on the complete other end. And that means that it's very, very easy for teams to move over there, which means that it's much less interesting to hold it. Like, there's not really much point in holding it because you're going to very easily get killed by somebody else. And it's taken out that interesting part of the map. And I think what makes that even worse is that because the Ascenders have some kind of weird tricks to them, like if you just use them normally, you're actually a sitting duck when you get to the top of the Ascender. It's a real problem and they make a load of noise. People actually do some kind of tricksy things with them, like they jump when they get near the top, and that means that their momentum can kind of throw them into the air, or they can sort of peek and back off and then use the Ascender again, or they can grab onto the edge and climb up, so it's a lot quieter. There's lots of kind of little sneaky tricks to it that the game never teaches them to you. It's not immersive at all. It's not a kind of instinctive thing of, oh, this is how it should work. It's just little tricks that are kind of hidden within the game that mean that people who already know how to do them can take advantage of them and have a massive advantage over players who don't know how to do it. And to me, this was the biggest problem with Warzone for the last few years. Like, all of these little tricks, you know, things like head glitches and drop shotting and slide cancelling, all these little things that the game doesn't teach you how to do it, but people who know how to do it can exploit it to have a big advantage over other people, just kind of expands that skill gap almost artificially, because it's like somebody who wasn't watching streamers or watching YouTube guides and stuff like that would probably never even know that it was a thing that you could possibly do. But people who do watch all of that stuff, it kind of gave them a big leg up. But adding more things to the game like that with the Ascenders has brought back a bit more of that skill gap, and it's meant that if you aren't the best player at Warzone, the game has now just got considerably more difficult for you. And yeah, this was a problem with redeploy balloons. Like, that was the biggest problem with redeploy balloons, was normal players who knew how to use redeploy balloons would just use them when they were in trouble and they needed to reposition and the rotation was a bit dangerous maybe. But players who were really, really good could use them to assault positions, use them to attack people, use them to sort of chain bounties and go after people and completely dominate the game. And it made the game miserable for normal people. It made the game miserable for anyone who was in a match with those sort of super hardcore sweats who were dropping like 30, 40, 50 kills a game. It made everything much easier for them and much harder for everyone else. And I think this has already made a stark difference in Season 3 Reloaded and where I've been playing ranked. Like, in Season 3, it felt like Warzone had slowed down a bit. It felt like as maybe not so great players we had a few more opportunities. We were having some nights where we were winning 2 or 3 games, which hardly ever happened on Urzikstan, just because we'd, made some good decisions about positioning. We'd had a little bit of luck and stuff like that, and it led us to have some cool moments because that skill gap had been crushed a little bit. Now the skill gap's got wider, the game feels incredibly hard, and it feels more difficult to kind of summon up the willpower to go up and play. When I've played with friends who maybe don't play as much as me, they've been a bit more put off it. They've been a bit like, oh yeah, this is back to what Warzone was like. It's not that much fun. I'm just dying all of the time, getting killed by these sweats. And that sucks. Like, it feels like with the remake of Verdansk, they were pushing really hard to kind of get more casual players back into the game. And now they're just starting to push them away again. And you can kind of see that in the player numbers. Regularly now, when I hop on Warzone on a weekday morning, there's only 35,000 people playing, which is very similar to what it was like before Verdansk dropped. It feels like with the beginning of Season 3, quite a lot of people came back to Warzone, and now Season 3 Reloaded has come out, and a lot of people have either burnt out on it again or have been put off by the changes in Season 3 Reloaded. And now the problem of not having as many players on the game leading to, bad skill-based matchmaking, you getting mixed up with lots of other people, which I've already talked about, you can definitely feel in Ranked, and longer queue times. They've already said, they put out a tweet saying they might need to look at crossplay, the options to have crossplay turned off, because in lots of regions you just can't find a game with crossplay turned off. It has an impact on all stuff like that. And then even worse, because they've currently got lots of different game modes to choose from, if you play Warzone, you can come in and play the normal game, you can play Resurgence, you can play Plunder, you can play Boot Camp, you can play Casual, and you can play Ranked as well. They've fragmented the player base even more, which would be an awesome thing to have all of these game modes available if it had the player count to support it. But as that player count drops, it means you've got less and less people in each game mode, and that makes everything about the game worse, basically for everybody. So, what's the solution? What can I do about this? Well, not a lot. I genuinely think if I was in charge of Warzone, which I'm not, I would get rid of the Ascenders again. Or at least make it so there's a lot less, really sort of go back to basics, take them all away and think, where do we need to have them? I don't think Stadium needs them at all. I think having people on that Stadium rooftop all the time makes that whole area of the map an absolute nightmare where you've got loads of open space. I don't think you need 4 on the airport roof. Maybe you need 1 on ATC Tower. Maybe you need 1 on the highest building in downtown. Maybe you need a couple on the outside of prison to give you more ways to get into that. Other than that, I think they could just kind of cut way back on those. And then I think they also need to maybe have a look at stuff like how easy it is to get loadouts. Obviously, there's been glitches and stuff lately where people have got loadout weapons much easier than they should do. But I think they could probably do a bit to make it harder to get loadouts. Make loadouts drop in a bit later so people are using ground loot a little bit more. Maybe even increase the price a bit so people have to do like 2 contracts as a team before they can get a loadout instead of just 1. I think maybe something like that would be good. But I honestly think they should be focusing on trying to reduce that skill gap again. I think not just for Ranked, but for all of the modes of Warzone, reducing the skill gap is good for the vast majority of players. It's good for everybody who is average or below average, which is obviously the kind of majority of players. And the more people that are playing Warzone, the better it is for absolutely everybody, even those players in the top end. Right now, I wouldn't recommend anyone to play Ranked. I think playing Ranked doesn't have the fun it used to have of having really tight skill-based matchmaking, so you're playing against people who are just like you. It doesn't seem to have the kind of interesting stories and stuff that you used to get in earlier games. Instead, Warzone's starting to go back to what it was at the end of last year, kind of in the Urzikstan era, of every game starting to feel kind of similar. It's starting to feel a little bit bland. There's always going to be like 1 or 2 teams that are starting to like dominate the entire match, and it just feels like bad luck once you come across them. I think they need to correct course quickly. The big worry from when they did Season 3, and I think a lot of people were like, oh, this is actually really good, they've made some really good changes. The big worry for a lot of us was they're going to go down the same path. They're going to make the same decisions. They're going to hear the same complaints. People saying, oh, the mid-game's a little bit slow. There's too long between fights. I can't always get 20 kills per game. I need to be able to go and get these kind of crazy kill counts to make my content, stuff like that. If they start listening to those complaints, they start coming up with the same solutions of, hey, let's do things that make it easier for those top players. Let's do things that force players together a little bit more, force more action, which obviously benefits the more skilled players. And then we end up with the game in exactly the same situation it was in before. I do hate making these negative videos. I really enjoyed it in Season 3, that Warzone was fun again. I could make videos about how good Warzone was and how much fun I was having with it. And it kind of sucks that I'm already going back to, yeah, I think they've made some mistakes. I think they're actively making the game worse. And I don't want it to be all doom and gloom. I did play the game for like 8 hours today. I enjoyed most of my time with Warzone. There were a lot of fun games with that, a lot of fun interactions. And I think I'm still having more fun overall than I did in Urzikstan. But it's just taking that kind of negative direction that I'm a little bit worried about, because Warzone did get into quite a bad state by the time we got to the Urzikstan era, and I really don't want that to happen again. I want them to kind of learn from that and start doing something a bit more interesting, maybe a bit more fun for casual players, rather than just kind of trying to cater to the absolute very best. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. I'd be super interested to hear what everyone else has to say about this. Do you think Warzone Season 3 Reloaded has been better than Season 3? What have you liked? What have you not liked? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.